In this lesson, we are going to discuss how we solve word problems that involve ratios. So a ratio is a way of relating two or more quantities to each other. For example, if you have a classroom where there are two girls for every one boy, we would say that there is a 2-to-1 ratio of girls to boys. Oftentimes we use colon notation to express a ratio. So essentially what this is we're substituting a colon in place of the word two. So a 2-to-1 ratio we would express using 2:1. Now let's talk about some examples of word problems involving ratios. So this first one we're going to talk about is where we have a farmer's market that sells apples and oranges. They make sure that at the start of every day, the combined total of both fruits is 400. On Monday, the ratio of apples to oranges was 5:3, and on Tuesday, the ratio of apples to oranges was 9:7. We want to know how many less apples the market had on Tuesday compared to Monday. All right, so what we want to start off doing is we want to find how many apples the market had on each day. So starting with Monday, this was when our ratio of apples to oranges was 5:3. So this means that for every 5 apples, there were 3 oranges, right? That combined total of 5 and 3 is 8. So what this means is that 5 out of 8 fruits are apples, right? As a fraction, 5 out of 8 becomes 5/8, right? And so then we're going to multiply that to the total number of fruits, which again is 400. So 5/8 times 400, and we'll put that over 1. And so now to simplify this, we're going to use what we call cross-simplifying, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as cross-reducing, right? So anytime you're multiplying two fractions together, and you have that the numerator of one fraction and the denominator of the other have a common divisor, you can go ahead and divide or simplify. And so in this case, we have that 408 both have a common divisor of 8. So if we divide 400 by 8, that becomes 50. And then 8 divided by 8 becomes 1. What this is going to do is it's going to make our numbers smaller and easier to work with, because now instead of having to multiply 5 by 400, we're multiplying 5 by 50. So that's going to be 250. And then on the bottom, we have 1 times 1, which is 1. So this means that there were 250 apples on Monday. So now we're going to do the exact same thing for Tuesday. So on Tuesday, that was when the ratio was 9:7, right? So that means that for every 9 apples, there were 7 oranges. Now that combined total, 9 and 7, is 16. So that means that 9 out of 16 of those fruits are apples. Right? And 9 out of 16 becomes 9/16, which again, we're going to multiply by 400 over 1. Right? Again, we're going to be able to cross-reduce. So looking at 416, you might recognize that both the numbers are divisible by 4. 400 divided by 4 is 100, and then 16 divided by 4 is 4. Now you might notice looking at 104, again, both those numbers have a common divisor of 4. So we can actually cross-simplify a little bit further. So 100 divided by 4 becomes 25, and then 4 divided by 4 becomes 1. Now we want to multiply, so on top we have 9 times 25. We'll do a little bit of side work for this, so 25 times 9. 9 times 5 is 45, 2 times 9 is 18, plus 4 is 225 in the numerator. And then 1 times 1 in the denominator gives us 1. right? So in this case, on Tuesday, we had 225 apples, right? So to answer the final question, the question is asking how many less apples did the market have on Tuesday compared to Monday? So to figure this out, we need to subtract the 250 apples on Monday and the 225 apples on Tuesday. So 250 minus 225 is going to give us 25. So this means that there were 25 less apples on Tuesday compared to Monday. Let's take a look at this next example. So here we're looking at an animal shelter, and we're given that the ratio of cats to dogs to rabbits is 5 to 8 to 1. So this is a three-way ratio. What that means is that it's comparing three separate quantities to each other, right? So what this means is that for every 5 cats, there's 8 dogs and there's 1 rabbit. We're given that there are 126 total animals, and we want to figure out how many of them are dogs. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out the proportion of animals that are dogs. All right, so if we look at this total ratio, 5, 8, and 1, if we add those numbers together, right, 5 cats plus 8 dogs plus 1 rabbit, we would be looking at 14 animals in total. Now, of those 14 animals, we know that 8 of them are dogs. So 8 out of 14 is going to represent the proportion of dogs. So 8 out of 14 are dogs. Now we can actually simplify that. So 8 and 14 both have a common divisor of 2. So that's going to simplify to 4 out of 7. All right, so the last thing we need to do is we know that 4 out of 7 of the animals are dogs. We need to multiply that to the total number of animals, which is 126. So we're going to do 4/7 times 126 over 1. And we're going to have to do a little bit of scratch work here. So 4 times 126. 4 times 6 is 24. 2 times 4 is 8 plus 2 is 10. 1 times 4 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So 4 times 126 is 504. And that's going to be over 7. So now we need to divide 504 by 7. 7 goes into 57 times. 7 times 7 is 49. Subtract, we get 1. Bring down the 4. 7 goes into 14 2 times. And there's no remainder. So 504 divided by 7 gives us 72. So our final answer is that there are 72 dogs.